Hey, well, welcome to Real Life. We're so glad you are here. I want to welcome everybody that's outside right now, the many people watching online, those of you in the room, everybody over in Simi Valley. And can we welcome once again our brand new Canyon Church with us over in Canyon Country. So excited for you guys in week 2. And we are in week 2 of our series called Getting Good at Being Busy. And there's a lot of things that you and I love in life. I mean, I love the fact that Canyon Church has just launched. I love the fact that, NFL season is back. I love the fact that college football is back. I love the fact that the playoffs are about to begin in baseball, which is so great, especially for Dodger fans. I love all these things, but there are a few things I'm not going to say hate, because that's just a strong word. I just don't care for. Can I just share some of these? If you feel the same way, just respond by clapping. That would really help me a lot. Okay, I just need to get some of this off my chest here. Here's one of the first ones: stickers on fruit. I don't get it, and I mean it's an effort enough for me to want to eat fruit. Okay, but then I got to peel a sticker off, and I know, first world problems. All right, here's another one. Celery, it's just not food. It's floss, and it has no nutritional value. It's a filler. I'm bitter about that one. Okay, here's another one. I can't even look at it. Clowns. All right. They're always up to something. And everybody who knows I don't like clowns, you know what they say to me? Yeah, but It is such a good movie. You got to see it. I'm not going to see It. I'm not going with you to see It. Don't send it to me to be seen. I don't want it. No, thank you. All right, here's another one. Spiders. Okay? Now, I know, they eat the insects. They are an insect, okay? And I don't want them. I don't want them in my house. I appreciate them out of doors. And those of you that have tarantulas, you're crazy. But I don't get it, and I don't want them in my house. And I kind of freak out about them. Now, several years ago, Lori and I are getting ready to go to bed, and I am climbing in bed, and I'm getting ready to turn the light off, and I notice as I look up at the ceiling, there is a huge spider on the ceiling. And I did what I always do. I said, Lori, would you kill that spider? Now, I'm kidding. I'm the man. I said, I'll do it. Okay, so I got a shoe, and I'm on the bed, kind of swinging at it. And I hit it, and this is the worst, right? You don't kill it. It just falls somewhere, and I can't find it. Now it's loose, and it's angry, okay? And so I don't know where it is, and I think, well, I can't find it. I look all over the place, and finally I got to go to bed. But as I'm drifting off to sleep, this is my last thought. I've heard this stat before, that every single person usually eats about 8 spiders a year, and they don't even know it. They just crawl in your mouth while you're sleeping. And so that's what I'm thinking of as I go to sleep. I wake up the next morning, and I look right there on my pillow, is that spider looking at me. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, that didn't happen. But I never found it. I don't know where it is. It's still out there, and it's bitter. Okay, so spiders don't care for them. Now let me give you a couple that are kind of pertinent to what we're talking about today, and that is this: weeds. Okay? Now, I don't do a lot of gardening, but I hate weeds. They're not supposed to be there, and what's so troublesome about the weeds is if you have just a patch of dirt and you plant grass, you get grass. If you plant nothing, you get weeds. I mean, they don't even ask. You don't have to go out and seed for them. They just show up, I don't even know if you can buy a bag of weed seed. You can buy a bag of weed, but that's a whole other deal. I'm not even sure that's a crime anymore. But a bag of weed seed, I don't think that exists. And they just seem to come up all the time wherever you are. You're trying to plant something, here come the weeds, and it's just frustrating. All right, now here's another one, and that is clutter. Okay, thank you. I really don't like clutter. Now, my wife says, well, you're not necessarily clean, but you are neat, all right? I can live with that because this is giving me the willies, just like the clown did, all right? Because I just can't do that. And I don't know if you've ever seen the show Hoarders, or maybe you've been on the show Hoarders, and we'll pray for you. But man, that kind of accumulation of stuff, that's just a lot to deal with. Or, and what I do in my house, and this is the game my wife and I play, she doesn't like to throw stuff away, and she just collects things. And then occasionally when she's not looking, and I realize we haven't used that in a year, I just move it to the trash can. And I just put it over there, and then she'll say, like the next week, hey, where is that? And I'll do what the rest of you guys do. I act like I don't hear her. Okay, and then, it begins this argument of, did you throw that away? I'm not so sure, and that's kind of the way it goes, because I'm trying to purge and she's trying to collect because I hate clutter. Now, why do I say all these things about weeds and clutter in particular? Because they're a whole lot like most of our calendars, filled with everything. Now, some of you love a packed calendar. You want to be busy all the time. You want to fill up the calendar. You want to have a lot of stuff going on, because when you're busy, you feel important. And to sit down is to stop, and you just can't handle it. Some of you want nothing on the calendar. But for many of us, what happens is we start off with good intentions, and we minimize what it is we want to do. But just like the weeds and just like the clutter, here comes the busyness, and we never figured out where it came from. So, we're in this series called Getting Good at Being Busy, because the reality is you're going to be busy. We keep saying when things settle down, and they never do. We keep saying I'm just in a busy season, but it never ends. So we might as well figure out, what does God have to say about our hectic, busy lifestyles so that we could at least be good at being busy. And so last week, this is what we talked about. We talked about understanding what it means to have enough. To be able to say, I have enough for now. I am enough for now. I may need more tomorrow, but today it is enough. And I gave you this prayer to pray over the last week, and I hope you've been praying it, and that is, God, through you, I have enough for today. And maybe just begin to quiet down that inner voice inside of you that says you need more and more and more, and you keep filling up the schedule. I have enough for today. Last Sunday night, I got an Instagram message from somebody in our church, and it was a guy just kind of having fun, and he said, I'm so grateful for your message today, because I got home and my wife said, we need to clean the house. And I said, the house is clean enough. And then she wanted to buy some really expensive shoes, and I said, we have enough shoes. And then she got mad, and she said, that's not what the message was about. And I said, now I've heard enough. And it was so freeing for us. So anyway, if that helped you, good for you, all right? So last week, we talked about how to have enough for now. If you missed it, you can catch up online. But today, we're going to talk about this. So you're busy. But what if you could be busy on purpose? Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that you take the things that are priorities in your life and you get strategic about them so they help you execute your purpose in life. Because if we really were to do a deep dive on our calendar, most of us are incredibly busy but never fulfill our purpose in life. Now, every time we get together, I feel like I'm talking about this guy, the Apostle Paul, because he was just brilliant. And he wrote so many amazing things about what it means to follow after Jesus. We end up reading a lot from him. And he wrote a good portion of the second half of our Bible, which we call the New Testament, which were these letters circulated amongst first century churches. And several times he talks about this issue of time. Now, take a look at what he writes to one group of Christians. He says, I want you to be very careful how you live. And notice what he says here, not as unwise, but as wise. Even back then, before the iPhone, even back then, before busy calendars, they knew what it was like to be unwise with your time. And he says, I want you to make the most of every opportunity, not just random opportunities, not just every now and then you kind of, get more engaged, but make the most of every opportunity. Well, why would we do that, Paul? Because the days are evil. Now, I don't know what you think of when I read that portion of that verse, because the days are evil. But it's a little bit less of maybe what you're picturing of Satan with a pitchfork, running around, or, an evil, like Stranger Things kind of thing coming in on your calendar. But what he's saying is your days are driven to disorder. And they are driven towards just consuming yourself with you. And I don't want you to be unwise with your time. I want you to make the most of every opportunity before your inner brokenness or the broken culture in which we live sweeps you away, and one day you wake up and realize, I never lived out my purpose. So he continues on, therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. In other words, understand what God's purpose is for you. In other words, don't let the people and things you care most about get leftovers. I like the way author Sandra Stanley says this. She says, my time is limited, so I must limit what I do with my time. So Paul gives us this great nugget about time, but in another passage that he writes to another group of followers of Jesus, he gives us another perspective on time, and he uses a metaphor we used last week about a race. And we talked about how most of us feel like our life is a race, like this NASCAR race, just around the track, and it's 200 miles an hour with the same scenery over and over and over again. And many of you feel like that in your day-to-day life. And what Paul begins to talk about is, you know what? It's one thing to have this race mentality. It's another thing to have pace when it comes to that. And it's another thing to have pace with your purpose. And here's what I mean by that. Most of us would say we have a purpose in life. Your purpose is to be a dad that provides. Your purpose is to be a friend that's loyal. Your purpose is to have a great career and take care of those in your family. Your purpose is to be a nurturing parent. But the problem is, though we might think we have a purpose, we don't have a pace in our purpose. And for any of you that have ever run before, you know that if you just walk out of your door and just start sprinting, you're not going to be running very long. Because there are certain hills you have to go up and come down, and there are moments you need to go slower and go faster, and you need to have a pace with your running. Otherwise, you will not make it. And that's exactly what Paul is talking about when he starts speaking to this church in Corinth and letting them know what it means to follow after Jesus. And he says, what you've got to remember is that you are on a race, but you've got to have some purpose with your pace. Take a look at what he writes in this passage. He says, don't you realize that in a race, everyone runs, but only one person gets the prize? So run to win. Now, what he's saying here is, if it's just a normal race, everybody goes out there and they're racing against each other, and their purpose is to win. So with that in mind, what do? Well, athletes are disciplined in their training. In other words, they practice and they are disciplined in how they prepare for the race. It's just like some of you that have kids that are playing football right now. Over the summer, they were doing two-a-days, and they were trying to eat right and everything. Professional athletes, they've got all kinds of trainers, and they have maybe a chef and a dietitian and everybody to try to help them be in the right state to be able to be disciplined to race. And then Paul kind of turns it on us. Look what he says next. They do it to win a prize, and oh, by the way, that prize will fade away. In other words, trophies rust. Every year we hear about somebody who won a Super Bowl and then they auction off their ring just because they need the money. We hear about people that win certain prizes and then they don't even claim them, or maybe they forget all about them. Think about this. How many vice presidents can you name? And the reality is these people were a heartbeat away from the most powerful person in the world, and most of us never remember them. I had this moment several years ago when it was just really clear to me just the brevity of our successes. I was at a Clippers game. Speaking of brevity of success, I'm sorry. Anyway, I digress. But anyway, I was at this Clippers game, and it just so happened to be the day that President Gerald Ford had died. And that night, we all stood up in the game to be able to sing the national anthem. And then they said, we're going to have a moment of silence to remember President Gerald Ford. Now, no matter what you thought about him, no matter if you were alive or not when he was president, he was president. We take a moment to remember this individual and have a moment of silence to pay our due respects. And in that moment, while we're all silent, somebody in the crowd yells out, "Candyman sucks!" And I had this brief moment of, what in the world? And everybody starts laughing. And then I remembered. Several years prior to this, the Los Angeles Clippers had drafted a player by the name of Michael Olowokandi as their first pick in the draft. And he was, how shall we say this, less than good. He was a bust. And he did not play, and he was not any good, and he got traded, and his nickname was the Candyman. Well, he was there that night on the opposing team's bench. And this individual, who was a Clipper fan, decided this was the moment to let the Candyman know how displeased he was with his performance during the special memorial to President Gerald Ford. I mean, it's just in that moment I thought, here's the man that was the most powerful person on the planet for several years. And his moment of memoriam is kind of spoiled with somebody taking a stab at a basketball player. How short our successes last, and how quick they go away, and how often we're forgotten. And Paul says you can run and you can race, but that trophy, it will not last. And then he tells us what does matter. We run for an eternal prize. In other words, your life and my life is best spent running for what matters. You want to compete? Go for it. You want to do better at business? Go for it. But you have a bigger purpose than just that. We have an eternal prize. In other words, you're not racing against people that are next to you. You're racing only against yourself as you are racing to become the person God has created you to be and live out your purpose. So speaking of purpose, this is what he says next. So I run with purpose in every step. Not occasionally, not just on Sunday, not Christmas and Easter, but every step. I am not just shadow boxing. Shadow boxing is just this, you're basically just practicing form and you're watching your shadow to see how you line up. There is no success in this. In fact, it's actually quite difficult because you're not hitting something and getting a little bit of recoil. You're just boxing against the air. It's worthless. And he says, I discipline my body like an athlete, training it to do what it should. And he's talking more than just eating right and getting enough sleep and taking care of yourself. He says, I take care of myself so that I manage my life and my time to maximize my purpose. And here's the problem with you and me. Most of us who think we have our purpose figured out, it's a little bit like that garden where we plant something and then it becomes filled with weeds. And sometimes the weeds aren't even bad. Sometimes there's wild things that grow that are good, like mint or dill, but it just might not be what you planted or what you wanted. And sometimes the good chokes out the great. You know that to be true with your time, don't you? Have you ever seen this quadrant before, these 4 quadrants? The not important, important, urgent, non-urgent. Most of us spend all of our time in the non-important but urgent category of interruptions, just putting out fires left and right. And then sometimes we get over into the non-urgent and non-important distractions because it just seems more fun and more achievable. But then this one area here, the important but not urgent, are the things that really matter, that often get put on the back burner because it's just not as pressing as the crises that we face. You see, the reality is that you and I have a schedule, have a life, have a purpose that is overrun with the weeds of the non-important but seemingly urgent. This is what Paul is saying. Your race and my race is determined by our pace. What kind of pace are you living on? You see, the problem that you and I are facing is we are running full speed ahead, going after things that matter a little bit, but they're not the most important thing because we haven't discovered our purpose. Now, can I just tell you what your purpose is? I'm going to be so bold as just to say, I know what it is. And you're going to say, well, I'm not so sure if you do, but I'm going to try to prove this to you. I'm going to tell you what your purpose is, and it's just simply this. Your purpose is to be focused on other people. And I'll tell you how I know that, because that's what you want for your kids. You hate it when they're selfish. You hate it when they're entitled. You hate it when they fight with their siblings. You hate it when they're disrespectful to you. You want them to care about other people. Your purpose is the same as my purpose, is the same as anybody else's purpose. Our purpose is to care about other people. Whether you consider yourself a Jesus person or not, you know the value of when you put others first. It always works out better for you. Now, I know some of you are thinking right now, no, that's not me. That's a pastor or whatever. I'm an electrician. Okay. I'm a custodian. That's fine. I'm a teacher. Good for you. You're confusing purpose with path, and they're two different things. Let's talk about that for just a second. The difference between your purpose and your path. The difference between your purpose and your path is that your purpose lasts forever. Your path can change. In fact, take a look at this verse. Jesus was asked one time, what's the greatest commandment? He gave us two, love God and love people. And then about a year and a half later, he summed it up in one commandment. Look what he says here. A new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. Here's what he's saying. Your purpose in life is to love other people the way that Jesus has loved you. Now, if you're a follower of Jesus, if you call yourself a Christian, this is a non-negotiable. This is the command from our King. But if you're still on the fence about this and still have questions, can I just ask you something? Wouldn't your life be better if you had always done that? Wouldn't that perhaps have maybe saved a few broken relationships? Maybe allowed you to forgive certain people, maybe allowed you to maybe save a marriage, maybe allowed you not to have so many regrets or guilt and shame. And for those of you that are kind of on the fence, can I just tell you, you can try without buying. Give it a go. Because I think what you'll see is you're going to discover that when you live this out, it is a purpose worth living for. And this is what's so fascinating about our purpose, is that our purpose is what roots us to what life really means. In fact, our purpose is the same, but our paths are unique. For those of you thinking, well, hold on, I'm not necessarily into that. I'm an electrician, or I'm in the Air Force, or I'm a police officer. That's great, but that's your path, and our paths are unique, and our paths sometimes even change. This is why some of us get really confused by what our mission in life is. Let me just say it this way. Our purpose never changes, our paths often do. This is the tension that some of us face in our life because we confuse our purpose with our path, because our path is to be a parent, but we think it's our purpose. And then when our kids grow up and move away, we don't know what to do. Our purpose is to love people the way Jesus did. Our path is our career. And then when your job ends, you think, what am I going to do? Because we've confused our path with our purpose, and we think our purpose was our job. And when our job goes away, we don't know who we are. And that's why some of us struggle to retire. And that's why some of us think our life is over when a job is done. For those of us that are stuck in this world of what's our path from our purpose, let me just say it this way. Your purpose never changes, but our paths can change often. Can I just say this to those of you that are still kind of kicking the tires on all this? This is another great reason to follow Jesus, because now you know what your purpose is, and it is obtainable by every one of us. We can actually be people that love others the way that Jesus loved us. Think about how much that would change your life, your relationships, your future, and how it could have changed your past. Let me give you a couple more descriptors between the difference here of purpose and path. Your purpose is the why and the what. Your path is the how and the who. In other words, your purpose is to love people the way that Jesus loves you. Your path can change. It might be, all right, I just moved in this new neighborhood. These are the people that I love. I just found myself in a new job. These are the people now I will show this love to. Because my purpose is the why and the what. My path is the how and the who. Now, here's why this is so crucial for us when it comes to our time. This is it. This is the big idea for us today. Your path must serve your purpose. The reason you and I get so messed up with our time is because we let our path become our purpose, overrun by weeds, and we never fulfill our true purpose in life. In other words, you can get so consumed with your career path that you begin to step on people and overlook people and run over people, and you never love them the way Jesus did, and so you miss your purpose in life. You get so consumed with your kids that you make them almost like you become codependent and they become unable to thrive because they're so focused on you, and you distance yourself from your spouse and you're unable to love them the way that Jesus loved you. You get so consumed maybe with just providing and protecting for your family that you forget about your neighbors and those close to you and around you, and you never love them the way that Jesus called you to love. You get so consumed with your schedule that the whole idea of being a part of a church, getting in a community group, serving other people, you don't have time for that because it's about us four, no more in your family, and you never live out your purpose in life. So here's my question for you. How are you fulfilling the purpose you've been given with the path that you have chosen? For some of you, this might mean you've got to unplug some stuff. For some of you, you just need to reprioritize what you are currently doing. But how are you fulfilling your purpose with the path you have chosen? I'm always amazed at how my wife is able to see this in me when I don't. There have been numerous times where we've been out and I've been so focused on my career path or the job I got to get done or the message that's coming up that I am just totally checked out with other things that are going on, and she has to rein me back in. I think of a time recently we were at a store and we were up at the counter and checking out, and I'm just zoned out. I'm probably, answering email or whatever, and I'm so focused on my path, I've forgotten my purpose, and I'm a little bit rude to the person behind the counter. And Lori gives me that look like, you better get it together. It's a very loving look, okay? And every one of you has someone in your life that gives that look to you. And I pulled it back together, and I looked at the person behind the counter, and I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I was distracted with my phone. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your help. And they look at me, and they say, okay, I'll see you Sunday, Pastor. Yeah, God bless you too, thanks. But for a moment there, my path was more important than my purpose, and I wish it was just a moment. But it happens all the time because we get so focused on the path, and we think that's our purpose, but it's not. Our path can change. You being a parent, that cycle's going to change. You being in your career, it's going to change. But your purpose, to be a person that loves others the way that Jesus has loved you, that does not change. And that is what we are all about. And you want to know what losing the race looks like? Losing is not somebody else beating you. Losing is you missing your purpose. And that happens when our lives just get overrun with weeds based on our path. So, we want to help you with this. And for those of you that are in a community group, I'm going to give you some questions. For those of you that are not in a community group, but you've got some people in your life, maybe it's just your family, to process this over dinner, I want you to take a look at these questions. And these are what we're going to talk about this week in our community groups. What's the biggest time waster you face? This will be fun for us all to discuss. Here's a second one. What pace are you at right now in your life? 5 miles an hour, 50, or 100? And then let your spouse answer for you. Here's a third one, and that is, what is the most difficult thing about living out this verse that we just read of loving people the way that Jesus loved us? And then we'll talk about this one. How are your purpose and path unique? And begin to divide that up a little bit and see what that looks like. And then finally, this one. Is your path currently serving your purpose? And if not, what will you do this week to correct it? What are you going to do this week to get back on purpose, regardless of whatever path you are on? For some of us, it might be apologizing to some people. For some of us, it might be redoing our calendar. For some of us, it might just be an attitude shift with every relationship we're encounter with. But for all of us, it's going to be our decision to be busy on purpose, because that's when we really get good at being busy. Let's pray together. God, I thank you for your incredible love for us, for your grace and for your mercy, and for how, despite how important we think we are and how busy we make ourselves thinking we're the center of the universe, you still have patience for us. God, I pray for everybody right now at all of our locations, inside, outside, watching online. I pray you would give them the peace of knowing that you're the center of the universe. And you've got all this under control, even the stuff we don't understand. And our purpose is just to live that out, to love others the way you've loved us. God, give us the freedom of discovering our path with that in mind. That there'd be a whole lot of electricians that learn how to just take care of people the way that you've taken care of them. There'd be a whole lot of teachers that continue to love their students the way that you have loved them. There'd be a whole lot of students that love their teachers and their classmates the way that you have loved them. And there'd be a whole lot of married couples that love each other the way that you have loved them, forgiving over and over again. There'd be a whole lot of kids that love their parents the way that you have loved them. And regardless of wherever we are in life, regardless whatever our path is on, our purpose would be clear. And we pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.